Look at your screen. Across the top of your browser are 142 open tabs, shrunk to unreadable slivers. Your email glares with 4,000 unread messages. Hovering over the close button triggers chest tightness. What if I need that? Society calls this lazy disorganization. Clinical psychology calls it digital hoarding, driven by the Zeigarnik effect. You aren't disorganized. Your brain is wired as an ultimate information synthesizer. You hoard data because your neurology is built to find a grand unifying theory across disparate domains. Let's dissect why your brain treats closed tabs as active threats, and why this exhausting cognitive loop is actually a misdirected intellectual superpower. To understand the anxiety of closing a tab, we must look at evolutionary mismatch. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived in information-poor environments. Psychologists Peter Paroli and Stuart Card developed information foraging theory, proving humans use the exact same evolutionary mechanisms to hunt for data as our ancestors used to forage for food. When you find a deep dive PDF, your brain assesses its scent. If it seems highly relevant to your survival or social standing, you are biologically driven to consume it. The internet is an infinite supernormal stimulus. Our brains, hardwired for scarcity, simply cannot switch off the gathering instinct. Hovering your mouse over Close All triggers a documented cognitive bias, loss aversion. Identified by Kahneman and Tversky in prospect theory, loss aversion demonstrates that the psychological pain of losing something is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it. An open tab represents a tangible psychological possession. It is potential knowledge. Closing it without reading it feels like throwing away a valuable survival tool. The anxiety you feel is your brain's threat detection system firing a warning. This is heavily compounded by fear of missing out, a dread of falling behind your intellectual peers. Digital hoarding shares traits with physical hoarding, but researchers suggest it's an entirely distinct pathology. Physical hoarding is visible. It invites social stigma, which acts as a natural behavioural break. Digital hoarding is invisible. You can carry 4,000 unread emails and 100 tabs in your pocket without anyone knowing. Lacking physical friction or spatial constraints, the behaviour scales unchecked. It operates in the shadows until the psychological weight and cognitive load become entirely unbearable. You are drowning in digital detritus, yet to the outside world, you look perfectly fine. Why does invisible clutter cause physical exhaustion? In 1927, Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik noticed cafe waiters could remember complex, unpaid orders flawlessly. Once the bill was settled, the memory vanished instantly. The Zeigarnik effect proves the human mind has a powerful tendency to fixate on uncompleted tasks. An unfinished loop creates psychic dissonance demanding resolution. Every single one of your 142 open tabs is an unpaid bill in the cafe of your mind. Your brain refuses to view them as passive resources. They are active, ongoing obligations suspended directly in your incredibly fragile working memory. Because your brain interprets unresolved obligations as problems, and unsolved problems as threats to homeostasis. This accumulation of digital loops triggers a low-grade stress response. You enter a state of continuous partial attention. The Zeigarnik loops constantly ping your subconscious. This activates the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, at a minimal but constant level, leading to an insidious buildup of cortisol. You are not facing a physical predator, but your brain is treating your browser window as a persistent, low-level environmental threat, requiring continuous psychological readiness. Psychologist John Sweller's cognitive load theory explains why this readiness is so exhausting. Working memory, the RAM of your brain, has a severely limited capacity. Modern research suggests we can only hold roughly 4 items at once. When you have hundreds of uncompleted digital loops, your extraneous cognitive load is maxed out. You experience severe brain fog, decision fatigue, and irritability. You sit down to work and feel inexplicably tired. The anxiety of closing the tabs keeps them open, but keeping them open drains the exact cognitive resources required to process them. You are trapped. Look beneath the cognitive theory at your neurobiology. Effective neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp identified the brain's seeking system, driven by dopamine. Crucially, dopamine is not the chemical of reward. It is the chemical of anticipation and craving. Opening a new tab or seeing a bold 4000 on your inbox floods your brain with dopamine. You feel alert and hungry for information. But reading requires sustained concentration mediated by the prefrontal cortex, which is metabolically expensive. So, your brain takes the path of least resistance. It opens the tab, harvests the dopamine, and delays the deep work. This leaves you addicted to the foraging, but starved of the serotonin and endorphins of task completion. When you are forced to consider closing tabs, the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, activates. Digital hoarders exhibit high intolerance of uncertainty, heavily correlated with generalized anxiety disorder. You cannot tolerate the uncertainty of not knowing what was in that unread email. The exhausted prefrontal cortex cannot regulate the amygdala's fear response. Unable to rationalize, the brain defaults to evolutionary safety. Keep the tab open. Maintain the digital hoard. If keeping these tabs open is psychologically painful, why do we rationalize it? Humans are masters of resolving cognitive dissonance. When faced with irrational hoarding, your ego crafts a self-soothing narrative. I am not a hoarder, I am an ultimate information synthesizer. To justify the 142 tabs across obscure Wikipedia pages and academic PDFs, you convince yourself you are engaged in high-level intellectual alchemy. You believe you are gathering disparate data across domains to eventually weave them into a grand unifying theory. You reframe a procrastination pathology into visionary intellectualism. This delusion is fueled by apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful connections within random data. Because you have tabs open on vastly different subjects, your brain fires off coincidental associative links. These brief flashes of false insight give you a rush of dopamine, reinforcing the belief that you are on the verge of a massive intellectual breakthrough. You view yourself as a modern-day polymath. You tell yourself that closing a tab would be a tragic intellectual loss because that specific article contains the final puzzle piece required to synthesize a revolutionary idea. Furthermore, you suffer from the illusion of explanatory depth. This cognitive bias occurs when people believe they understand a complex topic much better than they actually do. In the digital age, this is exacerbated by the Google effect, or digital amnesia. Because the information is stored on your screen, you mistakenly integrate the computer into your transactive memory system. The act of saving the information provides the exact same dopamine hit as learning the information. You feel smarter simply by having the tabs open. Closing them breaks the fragile illusion of your own intellectual mastery. Psychologically, those unread emails do not represent information. They represent potential versions of yourself. The Python coding tab is you, the tech-savvy developer. The Stoic philosophy bookmark is you, the unbothered sage. This is aspirational hoarding. Closing tabs induces severe anxiety because it feels like committing psychological murder against your potential future selves. Pressing Close All is an admission of mortal limitation. It is accepting the painful truth that you have finite time and energy. Closing the tabs forces a mourning process for the lives you will never have the time to live. Curing the data hoarder illusion requires intense cognitive restructuring. The first step is identifying and challenging the core irrational belief. You must realize that collecting is not connecting. Having 142 tabs open doesn't make you a polymath, it makes you a cognitive bottleneck. True information synthesis requires deep work, intense focus, and memory consolidation, none of which can occur when working memory is fractured by the Zeigarnik effect. You must grieve the loss of the ultimate synthesizer persona and replace it with a grounded identity. I am an executor who values depth over breadth. We then apply exposure and response prevention, the gold standard for treating clinical compulsions. The anxiety of closing tabs is a conditioned response. You must expose yourself to the anxiety without engaging in the safety behavior. Start with micro closures. Close one tab. Sit with a spike in cortisol. Notice that the world does not end. Notice that the missed information does not derail your existence. You are training your amygdala to recognize that discarding digital data is not an active threat to your physical or intellectual survival. In severe cases, you must execute the Bankruptcy Method. This involves declaring email bankruptcy and tab bankruptcy simultaneously. You close all browser windows and delete all unread emails in one fell swoop. The immediate spike in panic is incredibly severe, but it is rapidly followed by a profound psychological release. As hundreds of Zeigarnik loops are simultaneously severed, your extraneous cognitive load plummets to zero. The psychic dissonance vanishes. You wipe the slate clean, proving to your nervous system that you can survive the void. To prevent relapse, externalize the Zeigarnik loops into a personal knowledge management system. Capture URLs into structured databases. This neutralizes the Zeigarnik effect because the brain trusts the information is safely stored and retrievable. Transition from just-in-case hoarding to just-in-time retrieval. Finally, practice information fasting. Scheduled digital disconnection forces the brain out of the dopaminergic seeking loop and activates the default mode network. This is the neurological network responsible for actual creativity and the synthesis of disparate ideas. Open tabs are not knowledge, they are cognitive debt. Unread emails are not opportunities, they are psychological weights holding your intellect hostage. By confronting the anxiety of closure, mourning our infinite potential selves, and establishing trusted external systems, we can finally silence the noise. Only when the tabs are closed and the mind is entirely empty can true synthesis begin. If you are ready to stop fighting your neurology and discover more about your unique wiring, hit subscribe. It's time to reclaim your cognitive horizon.